Hey there, I'm Eran Stern for Stern Effects, and in this tutorial I'll show you how to work with native 3D objects inside After Effects. Now this tutorial is part of a series called 3D in After Effects, where I'll demonstrate how to use different tools, including third-party plugins, to improve your 3D experience in the application. This time we are going to take a look at native 3D objects which are available at the time of recording only in the public beta. So be aware that things can and will probably change by the time these features will ship. But it is so revolutionary that I think you should know about it now. So if you like to follow along, there are three things you need to do. The first is, of course, install the public beta from the Creative Cloud application. The second is download the clip and the 3D model that I'm going to use from the links below in the description. And the third one is to hit that subscribe button and maybe also like this video. Well, this last one is optional, but it would really help this channel. And it will also guarantee that you won't miss any future episodes. And trust me, you don't want to miss a thing. So let's get started. This time, I'll create another teaser for Adobe Video World Conference that will take place in few famous cities. Previously, I've shown you the Atlanta clip, and this time we are in New York. The concept is the same. We are going to use this cityscape clip, track the camera, and then add huge extruded text behind the skyscrapers, and then spice it up with a couple of 3D models. As a bonus, I'm going to also show you how to marry different 3D objects together, all thanks to the new capabilities of the next version of After Effects, again, currently in beta. First, I just want to quickly review the things that I've already created in this composition. So obviously I have this Manhattan clip, and you can get your own copy. This is a free clip that you can use the link below, by the way, or just head up to this address. This is from stock.adobe. You can download an HD copy or a 4K, depending on what you want to do. And on top of it, I'm just going to post the playback. There is the New York title. Now for this text, I'm using the Desire Pro font. And you can sync this font from Adobe Fonts. This one has many glyphs alternatives for almost every character. And I've used them to create ornaments for the N, E, W, and the Y. I'm going to show you how I did it in an upcoming tutorial, so stay tuned for that. But for time's sake, I'm going to start by tracking this footage. Before doing so, I want to also call your attention to the fact that I have this version of the same clip. I've named it Masked Manhattan. And this is just to sell the illusion that the big text here is behind the island. Now, the way I've achieved it is by duplicating the clip, placing it above the text, and then I applied the extract effect, which can help you to extract the sky. So if I'm just going to solo this clip, this is what we have here. And if you want my values, the white point is set to 144 and the white softness to 40. Now, I should also mention that I've added few masks in a couple of areas when the extract effect didn't really work well for the building in the background. And obviously we have two lights, a spot and a point light. Currently they are not going to do anything, but I just prepared them ahead of time to save some time when we are going to light this title and the 3D objects. So the first thing to do is select the layer underneath, go to the animation menu and choose track camera. After Effects is going to apply the 3D camera tracker effect. I'll switch off momentarily the Masked Manhattan version. Of course, this is a background operation, so when you are working, you can do other stuff in the application, assuming you are not going to close this project. Okay, After Effects has finished to track the shot. I'm going to switch off the title momentarily, and I'm going to click on this null which is above the One World Trade Center building. I'll right click on it and I'll create null and camera. So now I can re-enable the text. I can make it 3D. And I want to parent this text exactly to the position of the null. So I'll select the text, I'll hold down Shift, and then I use the parent pick whip and point it to track null 1. And now just to test how this works, I'll press spacebar and preview the result. So we can see that the text is now back in the background, close to the antenna over here of the One World Trade Center building. Okay, I'm going to select it. I'll press S to see the scale. I'll start by adding another 0 to just make it much more larger. And then I'm going to use the 3D gizmo and place this text where I want it to be. So something over here. I think that the antenna should be just underneath the E. And to see it better, I'm going to re-enable the masked Manhattan version. And this way I can return to the text and then make sure that it is in the correct position. Something like this, I think, will work nicely for our purpose. I'll preview it and I'm quite happy from what I got. So I think we can continue to the next stage, which is to extrude the text. So when you are working with After Effects, you have two options for text extrusion. And by that, I mean native text extrusion. You can use the Cinema 4D engine, or you can use the new Mercury 3D engine, which is of course part of the new versions of After Effects. And this is also the engine that will support native 3D objects. So I'm going to go back to my composition. I'm going to switch from classic 3D to Mercury 3D. Now, if I'll open up the text properties and drill down the geometry options, we have access to bevel and extrusion options. I'll start by changing the extrusion depth to, let's go with 60. And then I'll set the bevel style to angular. And let's raise it to 3. Now, it looks a bit strange now. And this is because we are not shedding any light. So for this purpose, I'm going to enable the spot and the point light, again, that I've prepared ahead of time. And we can already see this is looking much more promising. I think that I will scale the text maybe a bit more. Let's just make sure that the K here is basically touching this building. Maybe also raise it just a little bit higher. However, I think the colors are wrong here. So I'll return to the character panel. I'll click on the eyedropper and I'll sample this color from the sky. Again, I can just press spacebar to preview this. And one of the advantages of the new Mercury 3D engine is that it is really fast. So you can actually preview it almost in real time. Excellent. I'll pause the playback and let's move on to the most exciting step of this tutorial, 3D import. As things stand now, we have support for 3 3D formats. The first one is the GL transmission format binary, also known as GLB. The second one is graphics language transmission format, and its initials are GLTF, and the last one is the most common one, which is the OBJ or object format. Now, I personally really like the GLB format because it can contain information about 3D scenes, models, lighting, materials, and node hierarchy, as well as animations. Now, we can't access everything yet, so most of these are not going to show up inside After Effects, but materials are supported and they are also embedded in the file, which makes it my favorite format for this kind of work. So let me show you where you can get this model. Obviously, you have a link in the description, but just to give credit to the person who did it, or maybe the company, I got this free model from sketchfab.com. You need to log in. And if you want, you can just orbit around this model. This is the Zeppelin air balloon that we are going to use, not lead, but just air. Anyhow, the credit here is for CJ Mitchell. And if you like, you can follow him or her and also download their 3D model to join the ride. So I'm going to use this GLB format, and you have two options, one with a 4K texture size and another one with 1K. There isn't a lot of difference when it comes to After Effects, so you can go ahead and use whatever you want. So I'm going to choose this one, which is a smaller file. I'll download it and save it on my desktop. And once the download is finished, you can actually start to use it. You don't even need to extract it. So let's switch back to After Effects, go back to the project panel, double-click on a gray portion to invoke the import dialog, navigate to the desktop or wherever you saved the file, and click Open to open it. Now, what I would like you to do, if you want to follow along, is to just drag and drop it to this composition, which is going to show you the model settings dialog. I recommend to click on Make Comp Size, and if you want, you have a couple of other options. So you can set the scale on your own, you can use a different model unit if you want, or you can set other stuff related to scaling and the up axis. So if there is a need, you have a couple of options to modify this before starting to use it in the composition. I'll click OK here, and then I'll open its options over here in the timeline. And we can see that we only have access to the transform. So we can use those 3D transformation to control the object, and it's also going to be sensitive to the lights that we have in the scene. First, I want to just turn its orientation. So I'm going to set it to 270, like so. I'm also going to push it to the back of the scene. So I'll start to drag the Z position, hold down Shift until it will basically accept the lights over here. And I want to show you that if I'll move my cursor, my time ruler, it is part of the 3D solution, the 3D camera, because it obeys everything in 3D inside After Effects. It's also going to respect 3D unified space. But for now, let's just scale it so it will be bigger. So maybe something like 170. I'm returning to the position and I'm going to change the position. Let me give you some round numbers here. So let's go with 700 for the Y position. And for the Z, I'll tab and type in 1700. And then I'll shift tab back to the X and set this one to -100. So I came up with those numbers by trial and error. But now I can create a keyframe for the position, go all the way to the end, and then just drag the X value to help this Zeppelin go outside of the screen. So something like this, I think, will work nicely. And as you can see, if I'll press spacebar, this is already playing in real time. It is very, very impressive. If you want, by the way, you can go to the renderer options and you have a slider over here. And this is going to allow you to change the quality from the default 10 or 8 all the way to 300. To be honest, I didn't see a huge difference when it comes to this model at least. So I'm going to choose to set it to a quality of 50, then click OK. You may see a shift on screen in terms of the textures, but I think it looks quite impressive by default. I like it so much, I'm going to duplicate it. I'll close everything, press Command or Control D, and then I'll change and modify the settings for this model. So first, let me just take away the keyframes that I've created. I'll change the orientation here for the Y to 90, and I'm also going to scale it to, let's say, 70%. And then I'm going to raise it a little bit higher so we can see it. And I'm going to push it so it will be more or less above the letters over here. Something like this. Let's go with a round number of 10,000 for the Z. And then I'm going to use this 3D gizmo to place it at the beginning state. Create a keyframe for the position, go to the end of the timeline, and I'm going to use the Z-axis to just make this one fly in the opposite direction. That's it. Let's maximize the screen and press spacebar to preview this. Wow, this is so impressive and quite fast to render. Now we can stop right here and call it a day. However, I think we can improve the look and try to match the colors and also add the Adobe Video World sign that I've showed you at the outset of the tutorial. So let's move forward. So I'm going to escape out of full screen and go to the beginning of the timeline. And I want to tell you that as things stand now, we can't apply effects to 3D objects. Maybe this will change in the future. But for now, I'm going to show you two ways to work around this limitation. The first one is the obvious solution, which is, of course, to color correct the background to match the models. And then I'm going to show you how you can actually apply color correction for 3D models. And this is a nice workaround. But let's start with the easier solution. And for that, I'm going to select the Manhattan layer here, the lower one. I'll switch off momentarily the masked version, just so it won't be in my way. And then I'll go to the Effect menu, and under Color, I'll apply the Lumetri Color Effect. I'm going to open the basic correction. I'll play with the exposure just a touch. I'm also going to try and match the contrast, so I'll raise it to a value of 30, and what I'm doing here is eyeballing it. Then I'll lower the highlights to, I don't know, something like -10 or -9 will work. And let's also deal with the blacks. And I think this is as far as we can take it in terms of the basic correction. I'm going to close this one, open up the color wheels, and I'll start to drag the mid-tones towards the colors of the model. So something between the yellows and the oranges. And we also can play with this. I think this is the right atmosphere. Let's also lower the shadows, something like this. And for the highlights, I'm going to do more or less the same. So I'm going to just drag it towards the yellows and maybe even take the gamma higher. I think that this looks more or less at the same environment as the Zeppelin colors. I think this one looks quite convincing. So what I'll do is select the effect, go to the Edit menu and choose Copy with Property Links. And then I'll select the other version, the Masked Manhattan, and paste it and make sure that the Lumetri color is above the Extract effect. Now, because I did the copy and link number, this means that if I want to change my mind, let's say that I want to return to the original basic correction and maybe change the highlights, they are linked together now. So both of them, both of the Lumetri color instances are going to be synced. I'll press spacebar to preview at least half of the composition, so something like this, just to check that everything is working, and I think it does. Now, another way to work is to use an adjustment layer and then track matte it to the 3D objects. And then you can apply the effect to the adjustment layer and it will affect the 3D model. This is a similar concept to clipping mask in Photoshop. And this is what I did for this example. So I'll break it down for you to show you what I mean. I brought another 3D model of a screen. This time it's an OBJ file with basic materials. I've placed it in the same composition, which means that it now works in the same 3D space, and then parented it to the Zeppelin air balloon model, which is something that you can do now inside After Effects. So we finally have real unified 3D space. So above it, I also have a flat 3D card in space, and this is the AVW or Adobe Video World logo comp. I'll double click on it just so you can get a sense of what I have inside. We have the logo, of course, a layer of noise, and above it a mask for the edges just to fake some ambient occlusion. Now this layer is parented to the screen, so it moves with it, and everything, just to remind you, is still parented to the Zeppelin layer. So if I'll select and rotate this layer, we can see how all of it is connected together. This is just great. It is even wonderful. No, really wonderful. Now, what about the color correction thing? Oh, I'm glad you reminded me, because it looks like I'm drifted with excitement when it comes to 3D objects inside After Effects. So to color grade the 3D object, I'm using here an adjustment layer that I've named CC. It got its name from the CC toner effect that I've applied to it. And I'm using the screen object below as a track matte for this layer. This way, the adjustment layer is only affecting the alpha boundary of the layer below it. So simple and yet so effective. And that's about it. This is some of the things you can achieve with native 3D objects in the beta or maybe the released version of After Effects, depending on when you are watching this tutorial. I hope this was useful information, and if it was, please like and subscribe or have your say in the comments below. I hope to see you in New York or at least in another video. So I'll wish you safe travels and don't fly too close to the sun. Goodbye.